Todia is your regular typical pathetic loser who was reincarnated in a magical world after being accidentally isekai'd by a god as a teenager. He lost everything except his smartphone, which the god fills with magical powers as compensation for his wrongful death. However, just before that happened, he wakes up in a new world, and as he looks around, he receives a call from God, who tells him he already tweaked the map and navigation on his phone to suit his present world. After hanging up, he starts to walk, following the navigation on his phone. He wonders if he can get food and water with the currency of his previous world. Just as he continues walking, a greedy rich man on a chariot passing by stops immediately and comes running to him like an idiot to ask where he got his clothes, offering to pay a lot of money for them. He takes Todia to his fashion house to get him new clothes while he takes Todia's unique clothes. He also pays in gold coins in exchange, and as Todia prepares to leave, he asks the rich man for the nearest inn, after which the man describes how to get to the Silver Moon Inn. As he tries to find his way there, he overhears two disgusting men trying to bully two girls who had just sold a precious artifact to them by paying less than the initial agreement. Todia immediately approaches the scene and tells the girl he will pay a gold coin for the object, to which they instantly agree, so he picks up a stone and breaks the artifact in the rogue's hand immediately, annoying them. An idiot immediately charges at him, but he dodges and knocks him to the ground. After beating them, he offers the girls the gold coin, and they introduce themselves as twins named Elsa and Linz. They soon realize he is a foreigner, and he tells them he is looking for Silver Moon Inn, which happens to be exactly where they stay. After later checking in at the inn, the girls discuss getting jobs only from the guild due to the challenge they just faced on their last job. And on hearing this, Todia wonders what that is and immediately states that he would like to join them. The next day at the guild, they check the notice board for the available missions, but Todia can't read any of the writings, surprising the two girls. They soon decide on the mission to take on, and Todia is registered as a guild member and given a weapon. They immediately set out for the mission and isekai the monsters without batting an eye. After they return, Todia, who had seen that the girls displayed magic during the mission, tells them to teach him how to read and write, and also how to wield magic. They are surprised upon hearing this and ask if he has aptitudes for magic, stating that no individual can use any magic without first having the aptitude for it. He doesn't understand the they are telling me but replies that he doesn't know, but that he will soon have the aptitudes since an old man already gave him approval for the use of magic. He then asks how to know if he has an aptitude for magic. So Linz brings out some spell stones and starts with one of them, which tests for water aptitude. Todia tests it also and surprisingly summons water too. They head outside, and as he tests all the spell stones, the girls are shocked that he can use all the 6 elements. And Linz asks who the fuck he is as she can only use 3, which is even a very rare feat. He soon tries the null magic spellstone, which helps the users use any personal magic peculiar to them. And when the girls tell him about the gate spell, which helps in transportation between locations by creating a portal, Todia tries it and successfully activates it, shocking them. They later return to the inn, where some ladies come to ask them for suggestions on what to add to the restaurant's menu that women would enjoy. And Todia suggests ice cream, which they haven't heard of before. He checks his phone, gives them the recipe, and goes on to produce some cream, which he then gives them to taste. And they realize that his cream is something women will definitely enjoy. Following this, Todia and the girls take up a mission to deliver a letter to the royal capital. And on their way, they see a group of people gathered at a particular place and decide to check what's going on. As they approach the scene, they see a bunch of ugly men trying to attack a lady dressed in samurai clothing. The first idiot attacks her, but he only beats the air before getting knocked out in a hit. She starts to teach the idiots some moral lessons, surprising Todia and his friends, who are amused by her jujitsu fighting technique. However, her strength suddenly wanes because she is hungry, and as one of the guys attempts to hit her, Todia immediately activates earth magic and obstructs him with dust before delivering a kick. The other girls also join immediately in trashing the idiots, and after, they quickly run away to avoid being caught by the guards. The lady soon introduces herself as Yea, and as she talks with them, her stomach makes some growling sounds. They head to the restaurant where she embarrasses herself, eating like a glutton. And while they all discuss, Todia doesn't give a shit as his broke ass is only worried that this motherfucker is about to eat through his entire savings. After this, they all continue their journey to the royal capital with Yale also tagging along since she was also headed there initially, and on their way, Toya goes through a book of magic, listing the different ways the null magic can be used. After going through some useless spells, he comes across one that can be used to draw distant objects into his hand. He practices it immediately and successfully draws Ye's head tie into his hand. Upon seeing this, Elze and Linz warn him not to use it for stealing and picking pockets, and he immediately tells them he wasn't even thinking of that, but was instead thinking it could be used for drawing their underwear to himself, scaring them. After a while, he perceives the smell of blood from afar, and they immediately head there. On reaching the location, they see some lizardmen and a man dressed in a cloak attacking some people, so they immediately intervene to save them. After beating a couple of lizards, more suddenly appear, and Linz realizes that the man is using the summoning magic to summon the lizardmen. So Tulia activates null magic slip, which immediately causes him to fall, thus capturing him. The people who were saved come to appreciate them, and while they talk, a girl suddenly calls for help, screaming, and they rush there immediately to find that a man named Lee is gravely injured from an arrow and is almost dying. Tulia asks Linz if she can heal him, but she replies that she can't as the arrow is lodged in his body, and even if she tries to heal his wound, the arrow will still be there. Tulia thinks of a way and immediately activates the magic he learned earlier, suddenly drawing the arrow out into his hand. He then activates the healing magic, which instantly heals Letian completely. Letian thanks him and introduces himself as the butler of the Duke's family, and the girl is Sushi, the niece of the king. Upon hearing this, Elze, Linz, and Gie immediately bow down, making Toya wonder what the fuck they are doing, but he is told they are standing before a royal family. Lim asks Toya to come along, entrusting their protection into his hand, and he agrees since he and the girls are also headed for the royal capital. On reaching the capital, Sushi's father cheerfully welcomes him for saving his daughter, and while they later discuss, Toya learns that his wife, Ellen, is blind and no one has been able to cure her. Sushi tells him her mom would have been if someone had the ability of her grandfather, but the father tells her that no one can use the same magic since it's null magic. However, they hope to find someone with a magic similar to it. On hearing this, Linz and Elze recommend Tudia immediately, and he is taken to meet Ellen. He surprisingly heals her, and Sushi's father rewards him and his team with a huge amount of coins and the royal family's medals that allow a free pass through the checkpoints. After this, Todia and his sidekicks soon leave the royal castle, and following that, Ye is asked where she is heading from here, and she declares that she has decided to offer herself up to him.
Nice.
So they gladly welcome her into the guild as a member of the team. Following this, they take a walk across the royal capital, and as they observe the different species of beings around, the demi-humans, they see a girl looking lost, so they decide to approach her. They soon realize she's just an idiot who missed her way and got separated from her companions, so Tudia offers to guide her using his smartphone. They later find her sister, who appreciates them for taking care of her sister. The two parties go their separate ways, and Tudia returns to the inn with his girls. Some days later, he sees two stupid men still playing the shogi board game he had made for them a few days earlier, and he is surprised at how two broke-grown men can sit around wasting time like they've got investments working for them. While he watches them, Elze and Ye return with boxes of food, and they tell him to take one of the boxes to the Duke's family, which he reluctantly accepts. At the Duke's mansion, he presents the food and a shogi board as he helps the Duke to also waste his time. The next day, he and his team head to the guild to check which mission to take up next, and Toya suggests fighting against mega slimes, but the girls refuse as they hate any slimy substance other than his cream. Then he suggests another mission. On the mission, they head to the ruins of the old capital and quickly isekai the monsters. After, they wonder if there are any treasures within the ruins, so Toya uses his search magic to scan the area. He soon detects a historical relic, and they immediately head into the dungeon to find it. On their way, they come across a strange ancient magic script that they can't understand, and Toya decides to take a picture of it. They suddenly discover an earth spell stone, and Toya is asked to activate it by passing some mana into it. Upon doing that, the ancient script suddenly glows, and the secret door opens, leading them to the historical relic Toya initially detected. They move closer to the relic, wondering what it is, and as they examine it, Linz's light spell, which was providing illumination, suddenly starts to dwindle until it fades out, shocking them. The core of the relic suddenly begins to glow, and they instantly realize that it was absorbing the light. The relic immediately becomes activated, and they realize it's a magic beast, and not a historical relic as they had thought. Tudia quickly activates the gate spell, instantly returning them outside, thus escaping, but the beast tells them you ain't go nowhere, immediately breaking out of the dungeon and beginning to attack them. Linz immediately activates her fire magic, sending fire arrows at the magic beast, but it only absorbs her magic and becomes stronger. Ye also stupidly charges at it with a mere sword, and she is shocked the beast isn't affected. Els also makes her move but to no avail, and Todia immediately tries to use the slip magic, but the beast maneuvers its way from his magic path. He then tells Linz to use an indirect, which she immediately does by dropping an ice block on the beast, restricting it, before Elsa deals a final hit, cutting off its legs. However, just as they rejoice that they've won, the beast suddenly regenerates and attacks Elsa. Tudia goes to heal her and wonders what the beast's weakness could be. Then, he suddenly finds a way, remembering the principle from the shogi game he spent the last few days playing. He moves closer to the beast and immediately draws out its core using magic and throws it towards Elsa, who destroys it with her Mega Punch, thus defeating the monster. They immediately visit the Duke to report what happened, with Tudia also showing him the picture he took, and the Duke tells him that this might be a clue to the mystery behind the capital moving, and asks him to help get to the root of this. Tudia and his sidekick stood and leave, and the following day, Tudia returns to meet the Duke, but realizes he is rushing out to a place. On seeing him, the Duke tells him to come along as his brother has been poisoned. On their way, the Duke suspects that the culprits responsible for the poisoning must be the nobles who are against his brother's alliance with the kingdom of Mismeda. Tudia is surprised and asks how the fuck this concerns him, and the Duke tells him he wants him to use the same magic he used on his wife or his brother. On reaching his brother's mansion, they meet an ugly baldy referred to as Count Balsa, who tells them they have found that the culprit is the ambassador who came from Mismeda, and that her head should be harvested immediately. But Alfred, the Duke, tells him to cut the crap as his brother would be the judge of that. Balsa makes an insulting statement, and Tudia rewards his ugly ass with a slip. On reaching his brother's chamber, Tudia gets into action and activates the healing magic, Recovery, which shocks the others that he can use the Lost Null magic capable of healing any abnormal condition. The king becomes instantly healed, exciting everyone, and Charlotte, the family's official mage, tells him how surprised she is. Meanwhile, the princess is already crushing on him and decides to shoot her shot immediately. The king wonders why Mismeda will want to isekai him, as he finds it difficult to believe. But General Leon tells him that he collapsed just after he drank the wine the ambassador of Mismeda gave him. He then tells them to summon the ambassador immediately. Upon seeing the ambassador, Tudia discovers it's the sister of the girl who had lost her way back at the royal capital, and he tells the king to allow him into the dining room where the incident happened. In the dining room, he uses the search magic to search for any trace of poison in the room, and after that, he requests that everyone who was in the room at the time of the incident be gathered together. After they all gather, they ask him why he called for them, and he tells them that since everyone was present at the time of the incident, it means that one of them is the culprit. He begins to feel like Sherlock Holmes, but they aren't impressed, being disappointed by his stupidity. Balsa calls him an idiot, saying they already know it's the ambassador, but Tudia replies that he will solve the case. He brings out a bottle of wine, pours it into a glass of wine, and then offers it to General Leon to drink to prove that the wine isn't poisoned. Then he pours the wine again into the king's glass and gives it to Count Balsa to drink, but he becomes scared. However, Tudia reassures him that General Leon just proved that there is no problem with the wine. Balsa continues to fear even this, but he is forced to drink it anyway, and he immediately begins to act like he has been poisoned. Tudia shockingly states that he already wiped the poison from the glass and asks why he is still acting like that. Balsa is shocked, and Tudia explains to everyone that the king's glass had been laced with poison. Upon realizing he has been exposed, Balsa tries to escape, but Tudia makes him hug the ground again. Yumina, the princess, gets even more attracted to him, and later tells her parents she would love to marry Tudia, shocking him. The king accepts, but Tudia immediately objects, saying they don't know anything about him yet. However, the queen tells him not to worry as Yumina possesses mystic eyes of intuition, which can see into one's character. Tudia then says that they are too young to marry as his country only allows marriage for guys at the age of 18 and 16 for females. However, the king tells them to wait 2 more years to get to know themselves till Tudia is 18, and if he doesn't still think he can marry her, then it will be cancelled. Following this, Yumina joins Tudia's guild team, and they set out for their first mission. While they walk through a forest, Yumina tells them that she has a Bachelor of Arts degree in archery and magic, and she immediately demonstrates the dark magic, summoning some ugly, malnourished wolves, shocking them. The wolves are sent into the forest to look for monsters, and after a while they return, escaping from some huge gorilla-like monsters. Tuya and the others immediately start to combat them. After sickening them, Yumina begins to teach Tuya how to use the summoning magic. He summons the highest level of the magic beast, White Monarch, and names it Kohaku. Kohaku requests permission to be by his side at all times, but Tuya replies that there's no way he's walking around with such a huge tiger, and Kohaku immediately transforms into a small cat, which the girls find cute. On their next mission, they are required to investigate a slime researcher's castle, but the girls are sad at the thought that they will be dealing with slimes that have once melted their clothes. On reaching the castle, Tuya is given a blissful welcome with a knock to his head by one of the slimes, shocking the girls as they have witnessed such type of slime before. They head inside to check the researcher's documents for some useful information, and after that, they explore a different part of the castle, where they come across some green slimes. Linz immediately tries to burn them with her fire magic, but Tuya stops her, fearing that she might burn down the whole building, so Kohaku instantly transforms and unleashes a powerful breath, which blows the slimes away. However, the green slimes instantly start to approach them again, causing them to flee to the second floor. They soon discover that the green slimes don't come close, making them realize that they are marking territories. Suddenly, the stairs become slippery, and they discover that the lotion slimes on the second floor, which secret lubricating fluids, whenever they sense humans are the cause. They all slip off the stairs except Tuya, whom Kohaku saves, and the green slimes begin to grope the girls, melting their clothes. Tuya quickly saves them using the gate spell, and following this, they head to the next floor, where they come across some statues. Tuya observes a slight movement of plots on the female statues and decides to check. As he touches the plots, he discovers they are really soft, and two slimes immediately fall off, making them realize that they are bust slimes that were created to mimic women's plots, and also make up for the women with very small ones. The bust slimes see Yumina and immediately jump at her, because she's got really small plots, making her angry as she declares that she is growing. After this, they reach the researcher's room and see a dead skeleton, which is apparently the researcher's. As they observe the room, some slimes immediately appear and transform into naked female figures, shocking them. The girls immediately block Tuya's eyes from beholding evil, and after, the whole castle is burnt as Tuya reasons that all of the researchers' work on slimes was so he could have access to a harem of beautiful naked women. They'd all return to the city, and one morning, Linz returns with a magic scroll from the antique shop because she wants to learn a new spell. However, she finds it difficult to read the scroll as the texts are written in ancient magic. So Tuya uses the modeling spell to make a pair of glasses capable of reading the text for her. And after she begins practicing the new spell, but fails many times until her mana is exhausted. She soon becomes frustrated, so Tuya decides to transfer some mana into her, and explains how she could make the spell work, after which she successfully activates it. Following this, Tuya and Elsa head to the royal capital to get new gauntlets for her after breaking the previous ones in the last mission. After returning from the royal capital, they receive a letter from the royal capital requesting their presence as they want to grant Tuya knighthood as a reward for solving the incident the other day. Tuya is surprised and asks if he can decline, and Yumina tells him yes, but he will have to state his reason for decline before the public. After attending the knighting ceremony and declining the knighthood, Tuya is rewarded with a mansion, and he heads there together with his girls. On getting there, he reasons that the mansion is too big for 5 people to live in, shocking Linz, Elze, and Yea, who thought the house was meant for just him and Yumina. He tells them they aren't his family, saying he likes them all equally, surprising them even more. Later, a butler named Liam's elder brother, arrives with some other servants who will be attending to them, and just as soon as they get to work, the Duke and his ugly daughter with the funny name, Sushi, arrive, and he tells Tuya he came with a request for him and his team. He explains that the nation plans to form an alliance with the Kingdom of Mismida, which means they will need to prepare a venue for both kings to discuss matters, but adds that there could be problems along the way while transporting from one kingdom to another, so he wants Tuya to help with his gate spell. However, Tuya replies that he can only use gate to go to places he has only been to before, so the Duke tells him he needs him to travel to Mismida. Tuya and his team join the folks returning to Mizmida, and as they camp in a forest that night, they receive a report that some bandits are planning an attack. So Tuya immediately uses his smartphone to check their locations before activating a paralysis spell that paralyzes all of them instantly, right from his phone. The next morning, Tuya heads out with Arma, Olga's sister, and Yumina. And while they walk through the market, they see Leon, one of the guards, escorting them, trying to buy a piece of jewelry for his crush, Olga. They approach him to ask who he is buying for, but he lies that it's for his mother. However, Tuya intelligently asks Arma what kind of jewelry her sister might like, so Leon can know what to buy. Following that, as they tour the city, Kohaka and Tuya suddenly perceive that they are being watched, so Tuya decides to keep an eye out. They soon continue their journey, and later that night, while they camp in a forest, they notice that the animals in the forest are carrying on as though they are escaping from something. They wonder what it is and suddenly see a dragon flying across the sky. And Tuya checks his phone only to discover it is heading for a nearby village. They soon reach the village, which is already set ablaze by the dragon. Tuya immediately launches an attack with his magic, but the dragon dodges it and attacks with its fire breath. The dragon starts to pursue him while he runs off on Kohaku, and he manages to lead the dragon out of the city. He then unleashes multiple attacks, with Lin's following up with Water Blade, but the dragon resists the attacks and responds with a fire breath aimed at Lin's. However, Tuya saves her before she becomes a barbecue. They all unleash several more attacks, but the dragon shows them they are just a bunch of weaklings. Tuya tells Lin's to erect a huge defensive wall of ice behind him, and he immediately transforms it into a reflecting substance before sending a myriad of light attacks at it, which become deflected by the reflecting substance to set the dragon on fire, sending it to nirvana. A bigger dragon suddenly appears and apologizes on behalf of the silly dragon, which just caused them trouble. It soon realizes how powerful Tuya is, and it immediately apologizes for its rudeness before flying off. The next day, the village elder and his ugly assistant come presenting a fong they obtained from the dragon to appreciate him for his contribution to saving the village. He initially refuses it, but he is told he can use it to create a new weapon, since he broke his weapon during the fight with the dragon. He is then given a metal blade they also found in the dragon's eye, and he remembers that someone had attacked the dragon with the blade while it planned to attack him. The journey continues to Mizmida, and upon reaching there, the king of Mizmida welcomes them and thanks them for protecting Olga. Yumina introduces herself and delivers the duke's letter about the alliance. Upon learning that it was Tuya who defeated the dragon, the king challenges him to a duel, saying it's been a while since he faced a strong fighter. Before the duel begins, one of the king's subordinates begs Tuya to give his king a bit thrashing, surprising him. As soon as the duel begins, Tuya activates the slip magic, which instantly causes the king to fall to the ground, thus losing the fight before it even starts. The king feels cheated and begs for one more fight, asking him not to use the spell this time, to which he agrees. The fight begins, and after some exchanges, Tuya suddenly unleashes a fast attack using the boost spell, but the king disappears and reappears behind him with a strike at an insane speed, using a null spell called Axel, but Tuya barely dodges it. He is shocked at the king's null magic and asked about it, after which the king explains how it works, so Tuya instantly uses the same spell, shocking the king. Then, they both start fighting at insane speeds, invisible to the eye. After some exchanges, Tuya finally checkmates the king, making the king accept defeat. Later that night, during a feast at the palace, Tuya separates himself after being exhausted from taking too many pictures with his smartphone, and as he rests, a plushie walks over to him, calling him to come along. He follows the teddy bear to a room and meets a lady who introduces herself as Linha, the elder of the fairy folk, and that she is over 600 years old, shocking him. He asks if the teddy bear, which she named Paula, is a summoned beast, and she tells him no, saying it's the null magic program that is in effect. She further explains that the magic allows a user to input some commands into an inanimate object and make it operate. She then shows him a demonstration, after which he decides to try it out also, and he effortlessly activates it, shocking Linha, who then commends his magic talent. The next morning, Tuya thinks of an idea based on the magic spell he just learned, so he immediately heads out to try some things, but on his way, he meets Yumina and Linha, who decide to follow him. On reaching an isolated place, he takes the dragon's fong he was given, and, using a combination of magic spells, he creates a gun that can also double function as a sword, and he inputs some programming into it. The girls love it and request theirs too, which he instantly makes for them. As they return from the unknown place, Kohaku and Todia perceive that they are being watched again, and Kohaku directs him to where the spies are, so Todia immediately dismisses the girls, saying he's got some quick business. He activates Axel, and suddenly appears behind the two dumb spies, who immediately try to escape, but he tails them with his phone and uses Excel again, appearing before them. This time, he shoots them with his newly made gun using rubber bullets and ties them up. He soon realizes that it's Lapis and Cecil, two of his maidservants, whom the King of Belfast has sent to watch over Princess Eumena without her knowledge. They tell Todia to keep this a secret, and he agrees. Following this, the King of Belfast successfully meets the King of Mismide through Todia's gate spell. After returning to the royal capital, Todia, out of his boredom, decides to make a bicycle, and as he does, the king appears to thank him for his contribution to the success of the alliance with the Kingdom of Mismide. The king also becomes interested in the bicycle he is trying to make, and after completion, the king decides to abandon the affairs of the nation to ride a bicycle with a little boy who isn't even 16 years old yet. The other girls are amused by this new vehicle, and Todia makes it for them too. The king soon requests that he also makes for his little daughter, Sushi, offering to pay for all the materials used. Todia immediately heads to the market to get some materials, and as he walks along, he observes some hoodlums bullying a young girl who had pickpocketed them. He intervenes, but the guys try to attack him, so he brings out his gun and shoots them with his rubber bullets. He takes the girl to have some food, and as she eats, she reveals all that happened to her in the past that has made her a pickpocket. Hearing this, Todia offers to give her a job where she won't have to worry about food or shelter anymore, but on the condition that she will stop pickpocketing. He takes her to his home and offers her a job as one of his maidservants. Following that, he takes Sushi along with Eumena shopping to buy the materials needed for her bicycle, and while at the market, they see Arma, who becomes excited to see them. Soon, they see Alba and Lilian walking together, and immediately begin to spy on them, waiting to see what will happen between them. As they watch, they coincidentally meet the King of Mismide, who also joins them in watching two unserious lovers. After a while of watching and observing that Lilian's got no riz nor balls to talk with women, a fight breaks out there and Lilian immediately steps up to defend a man who some tyrants are bullying. The men bring out knives to attack, but Todia and the King of Mismide quickly intervene and deal with the idiots. Lilian soon discovers that it's Todia, even though he tried to conceal his face, and while they talk, he makes Lilian confess his feelings to Olga, which she instantly accepts. On returning home, Todia is told he has guests, and he is surprised to discover it is Linha and Charlotte. He asks her why she visited him, and she tells him about a similar incident to the crystal magic beast he defeated at the ruins of the old royal capital, surprising him. Linha then tells him to prepare to use his gate spell, often as she will be staying in the royal capital for some time and will need his help to move around. However, Todia replies that he can only use the gate spell to jump to places he has been before, but Linha tells him about a new spell called Recall, which allows a user to read the thoughts of others and jump to any place in the memories read. She tells him she wants to visit the ruins in Ishan and suggests that he use Recall with Yea, who is from the country. He activates Recall, and on seeing some places in Ishan in her memory, he immediately opens Gate and leads everyone there, shocking him as he realizes it was the same place he saw in Yea's memory. He asks Linha where she wants to go, to which she replies that it's the Neura ruins, and Yea, not knowing the place, mentions that her father should know. She takes them to her house to meet her father, but upon reaching there, she only meets her mom and sister. She is told that her father accompanied the governor, Lord Ieyasu, to the battlefield after the Takeda's armies suddenly advanced a few days back. She is shocked to hear this, and instantly tells Todia to use Recall to transport her to where her father and brother are. Todia promises her mom and sister to ensure her father and brother return safely, but Yea's mother asks who the f*** in the whole world he is. They soon appear at Yea's father and brother's army camp using the gate spell, and Jotaro is shocked to see his sister. Todia sees the injured soldiers around and immediately heals them all, surprising everyone in the room. He then asks about the enemies attacking, and Jotaro tells him that he has no idea, saying they should be dead already but are still alive and do not die, except their Oni masks are broken. Linha suggests that they might be artifacts or magic relics, so Todia decides to try something on his unreasonably overpowered smartphone again as he usually does. He pins the locations of all the Taiketa army and activates multiple magic that instantly rains heavy attacks on them, isekai-ing them. They'd all soon meet Ieyasu, and while they plan on how to take down the Taiketa army, an ugly lady named Tsubaki suddenly appears with a letter from Kozaka, one of Taiketa's 4 main generals who has been locked in an underground prison, asking them to stop Kansukaide, the villain controlling the army of the dead. Tudia tells them to leave it to him and his team, and he uses recall to read Tsubaki's memory before transporting himself, Lin and Tsubaki, to the Taiketa camp later that night. At the Taiketa camp, Lin uses her invisibility spell on them, and Todia tries to use the gate spell to jump into the territory. But it is blocked by an unknown barrier, which they suspect to have been erected by Kansukaide. Then, they head to the underground prison to meet Kosako without being noticed, thanks to the invisibility spell. They soon rescue the main generals, and after, the Todia tries to locate Kansukaide on his no phone but can't because of the barrier. Lin suggests it must be a talisman blocking him, and one of the generals offers to take them to the talisman so they can destroy it. They soon find the talisman barrier, and Todia destroys it with his gun and then pins down the location of all the Oni soldiers before raining lightning attacks on them, leaving only Kansukaide alive. Using the gate spell, they transport to Kansukai's location. One of the generals immediately launches an attack, but he is resisted by an ugly-looking goblin-like man who used to be their lord but is now under Kansukai's control. The generals are shocked, and they restrain from fighting him because they respect him. But Todia doesn't give a shit about respect as he brings out his gun and blasts his thick skull. Kansukaide reasons that this is some crazy dude, and he immediately reveals the immortal gem in his left eye, which will keep him from dying. But he soon realizes that he's a big fool as Todia activates the Apport's spell and draws the gem into his hand. The gem is soon destroyed, isekai-ing Kansukaide instantly. The next morning, Kusaka tells Toya that the Niura ruins he is looking for is located on the seafloor, surprising him, and then he uses recall to read Kusaka's memory, after which he heads there with his team. Upon seeing it's a cool place for a sus party, he goes to call the Duke and the King, who have nothing else to do than waste time, so that they can spend some fun time together. And while everyone is involved in one activity or the other, Toya meets Lin, and they decide to start investigating the ruins, which it is their reason for coming there. Toya jumps into the ocean and swims to the seafloor to find the ruins, but as he approaches, he can't hold his breath any longer, so he quickly returns to the water's surface, but not without drinking some salty water. After a while, he asks Lin if she knows any spell that allows someone to function underwater, but she tells him she never learned it. However, Kohaku tells him he knows one who controls water of all types who can help, and he recommends a magic beast called the Black Emperor. Following that, they head to an open space, and Todia summons the Black Emperor using the synergy of his mana and Kohaku's. When the Black Emperor sees Kohaku, they are shocked that he stoops so low to allow a human to be his master. But Kohaku breaks the good news that Toya will soon become their master too. The arrogant Black Emperors challenge Toya to a fight in which, if he wins, they will form a pact with him. As soon as the fight begins, Toya activates Slip and programs an infinite loop that causes them to continue to fall until they eventually surrender. They accept him as their master, and he names them Kyukuyu and Sango. After this, they transform into smaller creatures for easy movement with Toya, and they soon activate a protective shield around him, which then enables him to move freely in the water. On entering the ruins, he heads to the center, and the Black Emperors tell him to channel his magic into it, which immediately activates it and transports him to a strange facility. A lady suddenly approaches him with her floodgate advertised for free, but he tells her to shut her gate. She introduces herself as Seska and tells him that the floating garden, called the Garden of Babylon, was built by her creator, Professor Regina Babylon, who also built her to serve as the garden's control terminal for over 5,000 years, shocking him. She then tells him she has found him qualified to be her master, and she puts all the care of the garden into his hand, surprising him as he wonders how he is qualified. She tells him only someone who possesses all affinities could have activated the ruins, but not only that but also the fact that he is a Sigma male, and didn't fall for her trap when she showed him her panties. Tudia goes to call his colleagues, transporting them into the garden using the gate spell, and the garden amuses them. They soon separate after some unnecessary conversation, and while Yumina and the other girls tour the garden, she tells them she wants to have a chat with them. And when you would think the princess wants to hold an intelligent conversation, She asks them if they have all decided to be Tullia's brides, as discussed in a previous conversation, but they are all just a bunch of idiots who haven't still accepted their feelings for him. Meanwhile, Tullia, Lin, and Seska continue to talk about the garden, and Seska reveals that the garden was a complete whole until it became severed into parts and drifted away from one another. Tullia checks his phone to see if he can locate the other parts of the garden but can't find them, and then Seska tells him he will have to complete the registration for the garden, which is now in his care. While he wonders what he will need to do, she grabs him and exchanges saliva with him, shocking everyone. She then tells him she's collected his genetic information, and the ownership of the garden is now transferred to him. Linz immediately decides to shoot her shot too, so she confesses her love for him, followed by some saliva exchange too, shocking the other girls. They all return home and Seska is accepted as a new maidservant in Tullia's mansion. Following this, all the girls start to compete for their place in Tullia's heart, all fighting to be his bride, and he becomes concerned that he might not fall short in his duty as a husband, thus not making them happy. Seska meets him and reports that Professor Babylon has a message for him. She brings out a USB cord to connect to his smartphone. Professor Babylon's hologram suddenly becomes displayed on his phone screen, and she tells him about a particular history no one gives a shit about. She tells him she can predict the future, which is why she could prepare a hologram for this situation, and Tullia immediately asks what will happen between him and his girls, but she refuses to tell him. After the conversation, Tullia visits God immediately to tell him about his relationship issues. The old man summons the god of love, who seems more like a Barbie fan, and she advises him to think of his happiness first before the girls. After this, he gathers the 4 girls and tells them he is not ready to marry as he is not mature enough to bear responsibility for another's life yet. However, they tell him they will wait for him no matter how long. Meanwhile, Lin, Seska, and Charlotte are watching from the outside, and Seska reveals that, according to the professor, Tullia will end up with 9 wives. Later, Tullia and his Charlie's angels go on a quest to a creepy hole to hunt mithril golems. Suddenly, the golems rock their world with Stone Age projectiles while they fled for their dear lives. Ye launched an attack with her sword, but became 1 sword short due to the hard body of the golem. Tullia then put on his thinking hat and pulled a sleep trick on the golems by teleporting them into the sky. Afterward, he figured out where to drop them using his phone, and the group watched the golems fall from the sky like heavenly handouts. Following their crash, the golems stood up like they didn't get enough thrashing and wanted more, so also launched a series of attacks using water ballistic bubbles on one of the monsters, and Linz finished him off with a mega punch from her charged-up gauntlet. Not wanting to be left out of the action, Yumina also hit the other golem with lightning javelins and destroyed its core. The golems collapsed like a pack of cards, and the girls got to play with their parts. Back at the mansion, Tullia was welcomed by his maids, who asked about how the golem hunt went, and he flaunted their new rankings as top-rated adventurers. However, one of the maids pointed out that Seska did not return with them, making Tullia realize he had left her behind. When Seska returned, Tullia explained that he didn't abandon her on purpose, but she wasn't having any of it and pretended to be unbothered. However, she demanded that Tullia buy her naughty underwear as a price for her forgiveness, making Tullia freak out. After messing with Tullia's stress levels, she took her leave like nothing happened, and left him having tea with Lin. After Seska left, Tullia and Lin talked about how much of a bitch she was and also argued if they should find the teleportation circles to the remaining Babylons. Lin was disappointed in Tullia for being uninterested in ancient technology, and for being a dreamless loghead. However, he promised to help her find the teleportation circles when she finds out more information about them. After their verbal sparring, Tullia got a call from God, after which he hid and teleported to heaven. There, Tullia joined God and his circumstantial girlfriend at a table where they had a chat over some snacks and drinks. God had called him to ask how he was doing in the new world with his overpowered smartphone, but the goddess of love was more interested in his affairs with the ladies. She insisted he had to step up the romance since he had given rings to his fiancées. However, Tullia was quite surprised to find out that God and the goddess had nothing better to do with their time since they'd been watching them all along. Meanwhile, the ladies bathed together and talked about how sweet it felt to be gifted with rings enchanted with amazing abilities. However, Yumina and Elsa pointed out that their fiancé was a softie at heart and could be played like a video game on easy mode. Because of this, they decided to grow strong and support Tullia in every way they could. Later, Tullia went out with Yade to get her broken sword replaced with a mithril ore. As they left, they thanked Tullia and expressed her hope to be more useful to him. But Todia walked on like the unromantic fool that he was, leaving Yachty behind. She then pulled him back to ask the "So, what are we now?" question, and got a vague response. She then told Toya that she'd like more intimate time with him and would also like to flaunt him in public. Toya took her hand as they walked along to prove that he didn't hate her, setting her cheeks on fire. The next day, Todia went with Eumena to visit her parents in Belfast, where they announced their intention to get married. While the queen gave Eumena her motherly advice on how to keep a husband, the king advised Toya on how to clap 4 ladies and be good at it. However, Toya wasn't planning to get married till he was of legal age. Then the king asked them to get down to the baby-making business as soon as they could, but he got a punch in the gut from Eumena, who felt embarrassed before her crush. Afterward, the queen apologized on behalf of the king and gave Toya a heads-up on the rivalry he'd face if he had no known achievements. Their discussion was interrupted by Sue, Eumena's sister, who was excited to see her again after a long time. After their trip to Belfast, Toya and Eumena teleported back to his mansion. Then Todia asked Eumena if their marriage would make him a king, but she told him that it could only be avoided if she got a brother or a male cousin. Todia then considered the advice he got from the Queen of Belfast and thought of what to do to make his mark as an achievement. Later, Toya visited the Silver Moon Inn and was told the business had been slacking. He figured this would be a great opportunity to achieve something, so he set his brain gears in motion and figured there were no sightseeing spots in the city. He then brought out his superphone and built a hot spring bath to attract more customers to the inn. Afterward, he called his fiancés and a couple of old men to try out the bath. While Todia enjoyed the hot bath, his babes got busy strip-teasing and confessing why each of them fell in love with him. While the girls continued their boy-crazy confessions, Seska asked Todia from the ladies' section if he would love a back rub, but he declined. Desperate to show Todia her gawk abilities, Seska tried climbing the demarcation to get to the men's section, but she suddenly got stunned by a paralytic spell Todia had put up to prevent peeking. Seska then fell back down into the bath while Todia advised everyone to keep their cultured selves on a tight leash, shocking the others. While Todia relaxed and enjoyed his bath, Lene suddenly barges into the men's bath and announces that she has found a ruin of Babylon. Later, Todia and his slay avengers headed towards the desert, where Lene claimed the ruin of Babylon was. She confirmed the exact location and announced they were headed for the kingdom of Sandora, where the ruins lie beneath the sands. However, Todia was uninterested, and Lene reminded him that he was yet to appease her for leaving her behind. Her move worked like magic, since Todia immediately agreed to check out the ruins to avoid any further discussions about naughty lingerie with Seska and the other ladies who were suddenly interested in what they were talking about. While Todia thought about what lay ahead, his attention suddenly got called to a phrase flying across the desert sky which went after some hooded people. Todia decided they needed to do something to save the people, so they swung into action and intercepted the phrase when it aimed its tail at the people and launched an attack on them. Elsa suddenly diverted the attack using a wave of wind from her gauntlet and saved the people. After bringing the people to safety, Todia teleported Yahi to the top of the phrase where she attacked it with her newly made sword, but couldn't do any damage to the beast since its hide was impervious. The phrase swayed Yahi off its back, and she immediately called for Toya to rescue her with his gate spell. After Toya's swift save, the pissed-off phrase launched an attack at Toya and his Powerpuff Girls, but they suddenly dispersed and escaped the hit. While Todia hid and marveled at how devastating the phrase's attack was, Ende suddenly showed up and said he came because he sensed the phrase's presence. He then told Toya that he knew about the phrases and asked him to watch and learn. Immediately, Ende jumped on the phrase and it came crumbling down like a cookie in the hands of a toddler, surprising Toya. Like a curious kindergartner, Toya asked how he was able to pull that off, and Ende explained that a little bit of vibration and abracadabra in the right spot did the trick. He also explained that the barrier keeping the phrases out of their world was weakened, enabling the phrases to go and come as they please, seeking their sleeping king. Not willing to play 20 questions with Todia, Ende left while they gave their rescuees some water to drink. The leader of the rescuees was an adventurer who introduced herself as Rebecca and explained her mission to help slaves escape. The slaves all had magical slave collars on which made it impossible for them to disobey orders and could kill them if they tried to remove it. Rebecca further explained that only the slave owner could remove the collars and he was the dead. Afterward, Todia removed their slave collars using his support spell, and offered to take them home with him since they had nowhere else to go. Eumena then introduced herself as the Princess of Belfast and urged them to come to her country. Not having lots of options, they all accepted the offer and bowed to her. Shortly after, Todia teleports them all to his mansion in Belfast and decides to host the refugees. While they headed back to find the ruins of Babylon, Lean asked Todia how he knew Ende, and he explained that they met when he went to get the engagement rings. Todia had helped Ende out with some money when he tried paying with a 5,000-year-old coin, which was rejected at the merchant's store. He also helped him get registered at the guild to help him make the present-day money. While remembering his first encounter with Ende, Todia took out the 5,000-year-old coin he got from Ende, and Seska identified it as a Parthenon silver, which was no longer in use. The girls then concluded Ende was suspicious because he went around carrying old money, was incredibly strong, and had a weird sense of fashion because he wore a scarf in the desert heat. Afterward, the girls asked Todia more questions about Ende and the phrases, insinuating he was holding back some info from them. Todia then told them that he got a message from the creator of Babylon Garden who could see the future. She had told him that the phrases would destroy the world. Since the phrases had been gone for several years, their sudden appearance baffled Todia and his makeshift heroes party. However, Seska told them that the good doctor created an ultimate weapon known as frame gear, a gigantic robotic suit that was stored in the hangar of Babylon, to wage war against the phrases. Hearing about the frame gears suddenly upgraded Todia's mood from airplane mode to 5G afterward. Lean announced they had arrived at the location of the ruins, but there was nothing in plain sight except the sands of the desert. Todia and the other girls followed Lean to the spot she had found, and she cleared the sand with a wind spell. Todia activated the teleportation circle and was teleported to the workshop of Babylon, where he met a freaky wench named Rosetta. She introduced herself as the manager of the workshop and said she would transfer the ownership of the workshop to him if he could tell what color of panties she was wearing while standing still.
What did he say?
Frustrated, Todia tried to lift her gown with the wind and failed. He also tried to burn off her clothes, but failed at that too. He then focuses and looks through her clothes with magic and finds out her panties are transparent. He told her, and she registered his DNA with a kiss and transferred the ownership of the workshop to him. Rosetta showed him around and told him only she and the master could use the workshop. Todia then handed her his gun and provided some mithril for her to replicate it with. After Rosetta replicated his gun, Todia wasn't impressed because he was more interested in the frame gears. So he asked if Rosetta could manufacture frame gears, but she couldn't since she didn't have the blueprint. Afterward, Todia opens up a portal, letting the others come into the workshop. Soon after they got in, Seska and Rosetta argued about whose domain was better, and Todia asked them to cut the crap. Todia then decides to send Workshop Island to Belfast to merge with Garden Island. Back at the mansion, the refugees discovered Todia was the Princess Fiance and asked him to forgive their ignorance. However, Todia asked them not to bother about it. Rebecca then requested that they get a job with the guild while the former slave girls stay at the mansion until they could find jobs too. Sometime later, Todia created jobs for the former slave girls by opening the Moonreader Cafe, which had a library. So he went by to check out his new investment and found out the newly employed slave girls, as well as the customers, were happy. Todia was informed by Rebecca and her companions that the customers had taken a likeness to the bookshelves he got for the library. He pointed out that the books were expensive, but he decided to give back to the people by making access to the library free. While they talked, Todia explained to them how he had designed the shop using null magic. Will, one of Rebecca's companions, told Todia that his magic reminded him of his grandfather, who could use null magic too. He then said he was envious because the gift wasn't passed down to him. Out of curiosity, Todia asked about the kind of magic his father uses, and the boy explained that it was a useless spell called gravity, which makes things heavier than they usually are. However, Todia told him it's not totally useless if used in the right way. Meanwhile, Rosetta had been busy with the mass production of bicycles going on at the workshop, and a certain trader known as Alba purchased the bicycles for a good price. Afterward, Todia went to the guild with Eumena to help her with a quest to upgrade her blue guild card to red, like everyone else's. So they searched for a quest to take on and finally decided to go on a monster crab hunt. However, the guild secretary, Prem, asked if he was the owner of the Moonreader Cafe and requested that he stock up a particular X-rated book series known as the Order of the Rose. On their way back, Eumena asked Todia if he knew what the books she requested were all about, but he had no idea and assumed she was just an avid reader. Yumina then told him the book was about the bromance between knights of a particular city, making him realize why Linz insisted on buying lots of such books. However, he decided to grant Prim's request since he already promised. He then asked Yumina how she knew about the books, and she told him the series was anonymously written by her friend Relio, princess of the Regulus Empire, who was a member of the Rainbow community. Tudia felt like his head was about to explode and suggested that they go kick some bloody crab's ass to clear his head. So he picked her up and zoomed off on his foot wagon. They found the bloody crab, which was plenty bigger than they anticipated, and began their attacks. Yumina immobilized the crab with her earthbending magic and shot its limbs to shit, while Tudia jumped on the monster crab and doubled its weight using the gravity spell he had just learned from Will at the Moonreader. They went back to the guild and Yumina's guild card was upgraded. Afterward, Tudia informed Prim that he was feeling high and mighty and would like to blow his money on some books. Excited to hear he was willing to grant her request for the silly books, Prim gathered book requests from her fellow rose lovers and handed the list to Tudia, who seemed quite surprised at their enthusiasm. Tuyi then asks Yumina to be his Frodo on his newly acquired mission. On arrival at the bookstore, Tudia placed his order feeling like he just lost his condom purchase virginity. While the attendant went to get the books, Tudia checked for other genres of books to prevent the Moonreader Cafe from being turned into a spicy book club. While he was shopping, a customer walked in and requested a book, but Tudia had cleared out the library's shelves. She then pleaded with him to let her have one of the books he already bought, but he refused. Afterward, she checked out the books he bought and complimented his taste while giving him the side-eye. Tudia suddenly put up the "I'm getting it for a friend" charade to save his image, but she revealed she was the author of the Order of the Rose and offered to trade the book for her autograph. Tudia thought she was bluffing and tested her, but was surprised to find out she was actually the Princess Relio. Yumina told him about. Seeing her cover had been blown, Relio panicked and bought tow, yet would hold this discovery over her head like a blackmailing chip. She then asked if his plan was to clap her brother because he likes her kind of books. Pissed at her unholy imagination, Tudia gave her a forehead wake-up call and introduced himself as Yumina's fiancé. Relio was surprised that Yumina could be attracted to a man and asked if he was just trying to steal the throne. Her question earned her another brain-resetting tap from Tudia. After this failed attempt to get her brain to function normally, he summoned Yumina to explain to her in a way she could understand. While Yumina and Relio had their mini-reunion, Tudia replicated the book she badly wanted to wank on at the workshop and gave it to her. Back in Belfast, the library was stocked up, and the ladies couldn't contain their excitement while they grabbed their copies of late-night jizzing materials. A customer asks Will for a particular series, but he couldn't tell where they were. Linz suddenly shows up to save the day, making Tudia wonder if he should make her the boss. Afterward, Will apologized for not knowing where the books were, and Tudia saved him from beating himself up by thanking him for teaching him the gravity spell. He then asked Will if there was anything he wanted. Meanwhile, Will had been crushing on one of the former slave girls, so he expressed his wish to be able to protect her. Tudia then granted his request by sending him to train with the Royal Knights. He then bumped into Els, who asked if she could hitch a ride to the Silver Moon Inn on his teleportation gate, and he obliged. While Elsa took her bath at the Silver Moon, Tudia found out the bath at the inn was raking in lots of profit and also met Zanuck, a popular man who designs outfits. He then collected a cute outfit he had designed for Elsa and had her wear it after her bath. Elsa pretended she didn't like the outfit and tripped when Tudia complimented her looks in the outfit. However, her knight in zero armor was quick to keep her from falling. Later, while Tudia enjoyed a cup of tea with Yumina, Linz informed him about a new book series Relio wrote based on Tudia. She described him in the book as a powerful bisexual sorcerer who planned to take over the nation by clapping the nation's knights, the princess, and the prince. Furious by this, Tudia threatened to beat some sense into her thick skull when next he saw Relio. Sometime later, in a meeting with Linz, Tudia got a list of new books to be gotten for the library from the Regulus Empire. Tudia then pointed out that she had been reading a lot lately, making him wonder if she was planning to bag a Guinness World Record. However, she stated the books were better companions than he or anybody else. Concerned, Tudia advised her to take a chill pill, worrying she might eventually turn out like Relio. On arrival to the Regulus Empire, Tudia was surprised to find the city in a state of emergency. While investigating what was going on, he found some soldiers trying to kill a lady and disarmed them with his rubber bullets. The lady then told him the soldiers were taking over the city, after which he healed her wounds and kept her somewhere safe. After this, he found his way to the emperor's residence to save him and put an end to the squabble for power. On entering the castle, he was greeted by many bodies and tried to find the emperor but couldn't. So, he searched the building with his phone and spotted 2 people on his radar in a nearby room. He suddenly slid into the room, John Wick style, and took out a soldier trying to kill the princess. Afterward, he healed the princess, who was quite shaken from her near-death experience, and picked her up, splashing her face with patches of red, since she was a blank canvas waiting for love. Shortly after, the princess's bodyguard suddenly pulls up like a firework after New Year's and introduces herself. The princess also introduced herself as Lucia, while Toya announced his teleportation ability without being asked and got the guard, begging him to teleport the royal family to safety. However, Lucia pleaded with Toya to save her father and brother first. While Toya wondered if the prince and the emperor were still alive, the princess held him and said she was prepared for the worst. So they went to get the emperor but found him on the floor surrounded by some soldiers and General Bazor, who was surprised to see them alive. Toya questioned Bazor to hear his side of the story on why he was trying to take over the city and discovered he intended to break a peace treaty with neighboring cities. So Toya tried to attack Bazor with his magic, which didn't work because Bazor had acquired a bracelet that enabled him to summon a demon lord, share his powers, and absorb magic from the surroundings. Toya then tried his gun, but Bazor had another bracelet protecting him against physical attacks. Seeing he wasn't ready for an all-out face-off with Bazor, Toya teleported the emperor and the others to safety and humiliated Bazor by making him slip and hallucinate. However, the princess's brother was still missing. Back at Toya's mansion, while the emperor received treatment, Toya narrated his experience at the Empire, and his lady scolded him for always getting in trouble. Afterward, they assessed the situation at the Empire and planned their attack. However, the girls wondered how they could face the demon lord since magic was ineffective against him. Toya then gets in an evil mood and the girls sense he's got something up his sleeve. Afterward, Toya went to see the emperor and was having a sweet moment with Lucia, but got startled by Yumina, who had been peeking at the door. Yumina walked in while Toya took his leave. Yumina burst Lucia's bubble when she introduced herself as Toya's fiancée and asked if Lucia had a crush on her man. Lucia denied it immediately, and they went somewhere else for a private chat. Toya had gone to see the king of Belfast to update him on the situation with the empire, but he got informed that the queen was pregnant, and if it was a boy, he would be king instead of Toya. The king had mixed feelings because he wanted Toya to take the throne after him. However, Toya congratulated him and was asked to proceed with his plans to attack Bazor. Some moments later, Toya was at the workshop and talked to Rosetta about the bracelets Bazor had on. Rosetta then revealed the 2 bracelets, as well as other weird artifacts he had come across, originally came from the Babylon Storehouse Island and might have been lost due to the careless nature of the administrator. Afterward, Toya returned to his mansion and met the emperor awake. He was introduced to the emperor and was thanked for saving them. However, he waved it off like it's something he does all day. The emperor expressed his frustration over the situation in the empire and realized he needed a plan. Then Toya offered to help him recover the empire the next day, surprising them all. Princess Lucia worried about her brother and pleaded with Toya to find him first before dealing with Bazor. After this, Toya took a peek into Lucia's memories to see what Prince Romero looked like and discovered he had met the prince before. He then searched for the prince on his phone and got a location, and the emperor confirmed the prince was safe with a general who was always at loggerheads with Bazor. Toya then decided to launch his attack the next day, but the emperor asked if he could really handle the demon lord and lots of soldiers. Toya reassured the emperor that his team members were well strapped. The following day, Toya grouped his team and assigned roles to each member, asking them to spare anyone who surrenders. Shortly after, they were dishing out destructive ass-whooping at the Empire, while Bazor watched and took his losses in grand style. He suddenly summoned his pet demon and Toya went up against it, but fled when greeted with a series of attacks from the demon. However, Toya hit the demon with an unexpected comeback by boosting himself and increasing the weight of his blade using his gravity spell. Following his single-hit attack, the demon went down like a sack of potatoes, shocking Bazor. Toya approached Bazor, who claimed he had nothing to fear as long as he had the bracelets on him. Toya then pulls out a tempered glass box containing some dead sludge slimes from his storage. While Bazor wondered what he was about to do with that, Todia opened a gate beneath Bazor's feet and had him dropped into the tempered glass box, where the dead sludge slimes emitted a foul-smelling stench that knocked Bazor out. The emperor then reclaimed his throne and broadcasted a speech to the people through Todia's phone. While the city celebrated the return of democracy, Prince Romero, reunited with his family and Todia, returned home to his wives, who maintained a social distance from him because the stench of the sludge slime stuck to his clothes. Following the hostile takedown of Bazor and his demon twin, the emperor offered to reward Todia in a meeting with the king of Belfast and the ladies. Todia refused the offer, and the king of Belfast told the emperor that Todia would rather be gifted in women than in cash. The emperor then offered Lucia as a gift to Todia. While they decided his fate, Eumena said the ladies wouldn't mind having Lucia as a new wife, since she had confirmed that Lucia liked Todia too. Meanwhile, Todia was dumbfounded as they finally decided that he would take Lucia as his wife to unite Belfast and Regulus as allies. The emperor then asked Lucia if she really wanted to join the League of Brides in Waiting, and she said she'd be happy to. After their meeting, the girls celebrated while Todia wondered what he did to deserve additional pain in his butt. However, Prince Romero consoled him and told him with great power comes great responsibility. Both kingdoms agreed and offered to give him land along the borders of both kingdoms to set up an independent nation and do as he pleased, since this would make him the head of a nation and a suitable match for their daughters. Todia accepted their offers and told the king and the emperor he wouldn't be getting married till he was legally an adult. Afterward, Todia decided to name his new nation Brunhild in a meeting with his wives. They deliberated on what to do with the mansion, and then decided to leave the mansion as a base of operations in Belfast and build a new one in Brunhild. While they discussed, Lucia joined them in an outfit that made Todia realize he'd just won the lottery. Lucia then suggested that they build a castle, since Todia would be a monarch. While Todia searched his phone for a suitable castle design, Rosetta barged in, claiming it was time for them to see how resourceful the workshop could be. They all went to the workshop, where Rosetta listed all the materials needed to build the castle. Todia was overwhelmed by the requirements of building a castle, but was relieved when Lucia suggested they use materials from an abandoned castle nearby. Suddenly, the wives started making demands of what features they wanted to be included in the castle. In 3 days, Rosetta built the castle in Brunhild, and Todia went to check it out with his wives. While the ladies rushed in to check out their new home, Linha suddenly crashed the party at the castle and caught up with Todia on his recent achievements. She also made some comments about his increasing number of wives, but Todia asked if she had some better reason for coming other than taunting him. Linha then announced that she was the new ambassador for Mismeda and demanded that Todia get her somewhere to stay. Afterward, Todia set up a gate opener for easy teleportation between the castle and other places, and Ren walked in asking what it was for. Todia asked her to give it a trial and stayed where she wanted to go. The gate opened, and they were both teleported to the mansion in Belfast, where Ren saw a letter from the palace and delivered it to Todia. In the letter, he was summoned by the king of Belfast. Afterwards, when they met, he was introduced to Emperor Rig of Refreeze Imperium, who claimed to have heard a lot about him and offered a friendly relationship between their nations. Sensing where the conversation was headed, Todia refused any engagement with Ririel, the emperor's daughter. Fortunately for him, she was engaged already. So the kings planned to hang out with Todia at the grand opening of his newly built castle as a celebration of their friendly relations. In preparation for hosting the grand opening of the castle, Todia turned the castle into a mini-resort with his wives, trying out everything he had set up. After he finished his preparation, Todia thought of how to protect the monarchs that would be in attendance. While this was going on, Todia was notified by his maid that he had a visitor. The visitor turned out to be Tsubaki, who informed him that she was no longer a Taiketa shinobi and had come to offer her service to him. She also informed him that despite his effort to save the Taiketa clan and Kusaka's advice to the Taiketa leadership, the clan was ruined by the corrupt leaders. So the entire clan decided to serve Todia and to be citizens of Brunhild. Toyo decided to take them in, but stated they wouldn't all get jobs to serve the castle. Afterward, he went to have a chat with some familiar faces among the Taiketans, who commended his achievements and made jokes about their previous leader, while advising Toya not to end up like him. Then Toya asked about Kusaka and had a chat with him on how to get the city up and running. Kusaka suggested they build roads first to allow travelers access to the country. With Kusaka's help, Todia begins constructing the city roads, shops, restaurants, and places for travelers to get information and rest. Meanwhile, Lucia struggled to adjust to her new life, since she wasn't used to doing chores like the others. However, the other ladies encouraged her. One day, while Tuia was busy with his town planning and building, Lucia brought him some food she made. While he ate, he complimented her on nailing it on her first trial. The day of the grand opening arrived, and all the Western kings were in attendance. They played games and had fun till nightfall, and then Tuia announced he had one last entertainment for them. Seska and Rosetta dropped fireworks from the floating islands, giving the guests a magnificent view of the fireworks display. The guards of the monarchs mistook the fireworks for an attack and prepared to fight, but Tuia reassured them it was just for entertainment. During the fireworks display, Lucia thanked Tuia for opening her to a new world, and he gave her an engagement ring. He then held her hands while they enjoyed the fireworks display in the night sky. After the grand opening celebration, Tuia and his fiancés went to check out a frozen structure they had heard the merchants speak about. The ladies searched the structure for an entrance but couldn't find any. However, Tuia found an entrance at the top and jumped in. He then discovered it was another Babylon ruin and activated the portal, hoping to find the storehouse so he could deal with the administrator for being careless and giving them extra work. Tuia soon found himself at the Alchemy ward, where he observed the environment and got interrupted by a pink-haired lady named Flora. Tuia then told Flora that he had been recognized by the administrators of the garden and the workshop. Flora was impressed by how far he had come, so she placed his hands on her profound melons and accepted him as the master of the Alchemy ward. Afterward, she gave him a kiss to register his genetic information and announced that he had passed the test because he didn't behave like a rabid dog after broken her plots. Tuia couldn't feel his hands from the shock of what he had just experienced and blamed the professor for all he had gone through. Unbothered, Flora showed Tuia around and explained that the Alchemy ward could pass for a medical facility where they could grow missing limbs. Tuia, who was initially impressed with the professor's research, was disappointed when he found out that most of the medicines manufactured were for bedroom activities. The ladies joined Tuia and Flora in the facility and were awestruck the moment they set their eyes on her gravity-defying balloons. Meanwhile, Yumina and Lucia felt intimidated, so Yeti consoled them and told them they still had plenty of time to grow. However, Lean suggested that Tuia fondle their grape seeds to make them bigger, but Tuia played the saint. As he'd never done it before, Flora soon announced that her new master had just played with her pillows and even kissed her before they arrived. Back at the mansion, Ren brought new books delivered to Tuia, but he planned to give some of them to the library cafe, since there were so many of them. However, he checked one of the books and got hooked when he found a spell that could allow him to fly. Thereafter, he went out to practice the spell and went a little too far thinking he was Clark Kent. He came down feeling sick, but Elsa was there to help him by putting his head on her lap. Afterward, she asked if he could make her fly too. Tuia thought about it and figured out a way to make Elsa fly using his levitation spell, which he tried out and it worked. He was excited they could finally fight flying monsters and went flying over his city in a bid to perfect his flying. Tuia admired how good the city looked while flying and came across some of his citizens who were impressed he could fly and were preparing to start an order of knights. While he spoke to them, he got a call from God, but found out it was the love goddess who called him. She then informed him it was time to settle things with his wives and meet Lin's, Elze, and Ye's parents. Later, Tuia and Ya visited Ye's parents, and her father demanded that Tuia take good care of his daughter. Tuia was surprised at how easy it was to bag a wife, since he had thought Ye's parents would require more of him. However, her father challenged Tuia to a duel to find out how strong he was, but Ye offered to duel her father instead to save her father from being worked over like a piece of clay. Seeing how much Ya loved Tuia, her parents approved of their marriage. Tuia also met Elze and Lin's aunt and uncle, who overhyped him and humbly accepted their marriage because he was a noble. However, he told them to get over it since he was only a crash course noble himself. While they talked, Tuia found out that the village had been terrorized by thunder bears, so he hunted them all to keep the people safe while his fiancés argued over why they liked him. After his rumble in the jungle with the thunder bears, Tuia delivered their bodies to the guild and chilled out with a drink. While Tuia enjoyed his drink, Ende came around and Tuia took the opportunity to ask him about the phrases. Ende then explained that the phrases were in search of their king's power core, which is inside a human's heart somewhere. He also explained that the phrases kill people because they are drawn to a sound emitted by the king's core, which they could only hear when the heart stops beating. While they discussed, Endet unintentionally revealed that he's a traveler who has been alive for over 5,000 years. Afterward, he told Tuia that it's only a matter of time before the advanced phrases arrive, but he doesn't know how long it will take. While Ende took his leave, Toya asked him if he was an ally, but he gave a vague response and left. Following his discussion with Ende, Toya asked Rosetta if just anyone could use the framed gears, and was told it was possible with training but magical power could play a role. He then asked her to produce framed gear models in large quantities, but the workshop didn't have the required materials. Consequently, they decided to gather the required materials and also locate the other Babylons to speed up their preparations for the phrase invasion. Realizing they needed more hands, Kohaku suggested that Toya summon the Flame Emperor, also known as the Queen of Birds, to help them. Upon summoning her, the Flame Emperor appeared and easily agreed to a contract with Toya. She then asked Toya to give her a name. Toya named the Flame Emperor Kubyoku, and she took a smaller form for easier movement with Toya. Kubyoku then calls on the other birds because of the influence she had over them, and sends them to search for the other teleportation circles. Later, Toya woke up one morning and found Yumina sleeping beside him. His morning wood almost got the best of him, but he suddenly remembered he slept alone the night before and wondered how she got there. Toya suddenly freaked out thinking his V-card had been stolen by the Sleeping Beauty and fled to safety. Yumina woke up telling him sleeping together was a recipe for happiness and successful marriage, and that he had barely spent any time with her because he was too focused on the nation. After this, she gave him a peck and left to prepare for breakfast. Sometime later, while Toya cooled off on the lawn, he'd explained what happened with Yumina to Kohaku, who advised him to brace up for more crazy adventures with his many wives. While they talked, Kugyoku joined them and informed Toya that one of the scout birds found something similar to the Alchemy Ward's ruins. Toya informed his wives about the discovered ruins and they all prepared to go check it out. On their way to the ruins, while they wondered if anyone lived around the area, they got attacked by a green rank beast and the girls swung into action immediately. Toya aimed for the beast but got blocked by Yumina, who took the shot instead. Afterward, Lucia froze the beast to a spot with her ice punch spell and sliced off its limbs. Not wanting to miss out on the action, Elsa hit the limbless beast with a mega punch, and Ye finished off the monster by slicing off its head, leaving Toya feeling useless. As they continued in their search of the ruins, the girls hunted down monsters like Ghostbusters on steroids, leaving Toya out of the adrenaline rush. While the girls celebrated their wins, Toya found the ruin and entered without notifying the girls. As he entered, he activated the teleportation circle and arrived at the Babylon, where he suddenly got attacked with a large wrench by the tiny-looking administrator. However, he dodged the attack and introduced himself, telling her he's built quite a reputation for obtaining several other Babylons and banging the administrators. The administrator also introduced herself as Monica and charged at him with the wrench to see if he was as good as he said he was. Toya then proved his strength to her by suddenly pulling the slip trick on her, exposing her hidden treasures. Afterward, Monica tried to wipe out his drive with the wrench to save her face, but got friendly with the ground again, giving him a much better view of her confidential package. After this, Monica asked Toya to help her get up and planted a surprise kiss on him, transferring ownership of the hangar to him. Toya then asked to see the framed gears and they went into the hangar together. The short-fused administrator crushed the door button with her wrench because she was vertically challenged and frustrated, surprising Toya. As the door opened, Toya was elated to finally see the frame gear and asked if he could get on it, but froze like a chalk statue when Monica said it wouldn't work without fuel. She then told him the frame gears were powered by Aether, which could only be made at the still-missing research lab. Toya felt like he'd been struck by lightning and fell to his knees disappointed. However, Monica told him Flora might be able to help. After this, Toya and the ladies met Flora at the Alchemy Ward, where she told them she could only make an inferior version of what the research lab could make and would require rare spell stones about 30 centimeters wide. The ladies told Toya that spell stones of that size didn't exist, but he searched on his phone and discovered there were only 6 all over the world. Fortunately, one was found in Brunhild and brought to Flora, who promised to have the fuel ready in a month. Later, while Toya daydreamed about piloting the frame gear suits, Rosetta suggested they carry out light maintenance on the frame gears since they had been collecting dust for years. However, Monica insisted it was unnecessary since she'd been doing her job as the administrator, reminding Toya what happened with the door button. Afterward, Monica showed Toya the pilot's seat and explained the basics of the control to him. She further stated that the suit reads the mind of its pilot, and its efficiency depended on the experience and practice of the pilot. Tudia couldn't wait to kick some ass with the suits, so Rosetta announced she had seen that coming and made some frame units, which are simulation systems for learning to pilot the frame gears. Shortly after, Toya and Rosetta were virtually dueling in the frame gears. Toya named the frame gears the Chevaliers and the frame units were taken to Brunhild, where Todia's fiancés also trained to pilot the gears in the simulation units. Later, Sue suddenly jumped Toya and demanded to be added to his harem of miniature ladies. After this, Toya's butler rescued him from her grip and told him that Sue had received a proposal from Prince Zabun of Linha Kingdom, who gets off by roughing up women. The 30-year-old idiot claimed to have fallen in love with Sue at the social party and intended to marry her right away. Tudia then consulted his fiancés and they all agreed he could marry Sue. However, rejecting Zabun's proposal would cause bigger problems for the nation, so Toya decided to talk to the Duke of Belfast about it. At the meeting with the Duke, Toya learns that Wardak, the Prime Minister and Zabun's uncle, allows him to get away with his crime since he calls the shots in Linha, and the king is just an emasculated figurehead. However, Zabun had a half-brother who was reasonable, but was kept away from the palace and humiliated. While they discussed, an emissary arrived from Linha to get a response to the proposal. However, the Duke turned down the proposal, saying his daughter had decided to marry Toya, who he introduced as the Duke of Brunhild. Having heard much about his teleportation abilities, the emissary introduced himself as Cloud, Zabun's half-brother, and begged Toya to rescue his mother, who had been imprisoned. Afterward, Cloud explained that his mother was not sick as they made the people believe, but she had been held prisoner by Wardak and had been used as leverage to control the king. He also revealed that the king might be killed if he went against Wardak, who supported the first prince, because he wanted his bloodline to inherit the throne, and the marriage proposal was his plan to speed up the process. Seeing how deep-rooted the conspiracy was, the Duke proposed a summit with the other leaders of the Western nation. At the summit, the leaders discussed how to screw up Wardak's treasonous plans and crown Cloud as the new king. Tudia then asked Cloud if rescuing his mother would be enough for him. But Cloud told the leaders how he had seen the people of Linha suffer under the Wardak and his brother, stating his intention to change that. The King of Belfast then asked if there was any noble in Linha who could support Cloud with their influence. Cloud told them about the only support he had, Marcus Coup, who was a well-regarded noble, and the previous prime minister. The leaders then cast their votes in support of Cloud, but dumped the responsibility of how to go about it on Toya after he suggested that they resolve the issue in a non-violent way. Using his invisibility spell, Toya, Yat and Elzo followed Cloud incognito and infiltrated Linha. Tudia decided he would like to see the scumbags for himself and instructed Cloud to play along. Cloud bowed and announced his return while his brother looked at him like a pile of shit and asked why he got back so early since he was a dullard. While Cloud reported the Duke's response to Zabun's proposal, Toya spotted one of Zabun's female slaves who had a collar on. Zabun got furious and slapped Cloud while his invisible companions watched. Zabun then said Cloud should have kidnapped Sue and they would have put a collar on her neck. Shortly after, he asked to know who snatched his love interest and Cloud told him it was the Duke of Brunhild. So Zabun instructed Cloud to spread filthy rumors about Toya, annoying Cloud. Seeing the disdainful look on Cloud's face, Zabun beat the living shit out of him. Queen Darsha, Zabun's mother, walked in on them, and Zabun told her the proposal was rejected, blaming Cloud for his bad luck with ladies. He then asked if he could be king without getting married, and his mother promised to talk to Wardak about it. Later, Toya healed Cloud and also rescued Zabun's girl toy from her slave collar. Shortly after this, Zabun was in the mood to play but couldn't find his slave. Afterward, he reported to Wardak, who then suggested that he kill the slave since her collar was no longer compelling her to obey instructions. So he crushed the collar to kill the girl for escaping, unaware that it had been removed. While Zabun ranted about his lost slave, Wardak announced his plan to start a war with a neighboring kingdom using Cloud as bait by sending him on a suicide mission. However, Toya revealed Wardak's plan to Cloud and asked if he was willing to go all out against the Prime Minister and his dumbass half-brother. Cloud then decided to save his mother before taking down the power-hungry pinheads. Later that day, Cloud led Todia and his girls to the fortress where his mother was held. Todia paralyzed the soldiers on guard with his phone, and they went into the tower where Cloud's mother was imprisoned and Cloud reunited with his mother. Afterward, Todia opened a gate and they all escaped. Shortly after, they visited Coup, the former prime minister of Linha whom Cloud trusted, and discussed the best way to put an end to Wardak's tyranny. Ye suggested they exile him for all of his wrongdoings, but Coup told them that would be impossible since he always covered his tracks. While Cloud made his mother feel comfortable, Toya's girls could sense Toya's inner demon taking over since he was cooking up some evil plan. The next day, Wardak got furious when he realized Cloud had rescued his mother and told Zabun and his mother that they had to make Zabun king as soon as possible. Zabun took his leave less concerned and thinking he'd be giving orders real soon. Meanwhile, Toya was back incognito and eavesdropping on their conversation. He then pulled out his phone and recorded Wardak and Zabun's mother plotting to wipe out the entire bloodline of the royal family after they crowned Zabun, their only child. Cloud and the others were shocked when Toya returned to Coup's residence with the evidence he gathered. Afterward, Toya teleported himself to the king's palace and revealed the secret he had just uncovered to the king. After this, the king summoned his people and announced openly that he would be retiring and Cloud, his first prince, would inherit the throne. Shocked by the king's announcement, Wardak, Darsha, and Zabun objected to his decision. Cloud stepped forward, bowing to his father in acceptance of his new role as king and called Toya forward. Toya then revealed the conversation he recorded as evidence through the projection function of his phone. The people discovered Zabun was not of the royal bloodline and Wardak was stripped of his post. Following this, the king expressed his regrets for prioritizing his wife's safety over the well-being of his people. Zabun suddenly denied any involvement in the whole conspiracy, but the king told him he was aware of his crimes which were bad enough to warrant a death penalty. Zabun then threatened Toya and his people, but instantly regretted it as Toya shot him with rubber bullets. Afterward, Cloud sentenced Wardak, Darsha, and Zabun to death officially, but secretly sold them to a foreign slave trader who sent them to work as slaves in Sandora. Every noble and merchants who worked with Wardak were banished and Coup was reinstated as the prime minister. Meanwhile, the alliance of Western nations welcomed Cloud as their newest member. Toya returned to the castle and was greeted by Sue, who was over the moon for being rescued from the psychopath. However, Toya insisted he couldn't get married to her till he clocked 18. Sometime later, Olga and Leon got married and Toya attended with his fiancés. While the new couple gave their vote of thanks, General Leon and Olga approached Toya and thanked him for helping Leon stumble accidentally into a proposal. He in turn congratulated them as they got called away. After this, Toya got swarmed by his ladies in waiting who couldn't stop daydreaming about what their wedding day would look like and asked when they would be getting married. However, Toya asked them to lower their voices since it is yet to be announced. After the wedding, Cupid made a bullseye hit on Yumina, and she suddenly suggested they should spend more time going on dates and shopping together to build their love while getting to know each other better. The other ladies suddenly fell in line and accused Toya of not spending enough time with them. Seeing he was outnumbered, Toya gave in and decided to take them out on a date. The ladies got dressed in newly ordered outfits to surprise Toya, and he complimented their new looks. Afterward, the girls played rock, paper, scissors to decide who would hold Toya's hands while they explored the city. Afterward, Elze and Lucia clung to his arms, making him feel like Johnny Bravo. After this, they explored some shops and Toya got the girls some gifts to celebrate their date. They'd also got some food, and while they ate together, the girls insisted on treating Toya like the monarch that he was before exploring other parts of the city. On their way, they found a movie poster at the theater and decided to watch a movie together since it was a romantic movie. Before they went in to see a movie, they were intercepted by a gang of scallywags who tried to rob them, but got their asses knocked out by the ladies. After the movie, when they returned home, they talked about how much they enjoyed the day and how fun it was to get the rush of adrenaline, while teaching the thieves some lessons. On getting home, they met Sue, who was waiting furiously for them. Sue then demanded a personal date with Toya as the price for being abandoned by them. The next day, Toya and Sue went shopping and explored Brunhild, where his citizens were happily settling in. They sat down for a while, and Sue complimented Toya for being a good leader. While they rounded up their tour around Brunhild, Kohakud notified Toya that Flora had successfully extracted the ether liquid. The next day, Toya had Yai test the Chevalier because she had the best handle of magic, and she reported it was a smooth and easy ride in the pilot's seat. Before Toya could try it out himself, the girls jumped the line and took turns trying out the robotic suit while Toya watched in frustration. Meanwhile, Rosetta had been making weapons and bullets from the crystals gotten from the dead phrases. Toya found the weapons impressive, because they get stronger when wielded with magic. Based on Toya's request, Rosetta had also begun the mass production of the framed gears but was running out of orichalcum. While Toya worried about how to get more resources to keep the production going, Lucia and Yumur clung to him and asked why he was ignoring them again. He then informed them about the shortage of resources at the workshop, and they suggested that he check out the mineral shop. After this, he told them the orichalcum was rare and expensive, explaining why he needed to save money for the future. While they discussed, Toya got an idea and asked if orichalcum golems existed, but neither of them had heard of it. So Toya searched on his phone and found a few. His fiancés whined about being abandoned again, but changed their minds when he told them he was going to be flying to the location. After this, Toya arrived at the kingdom of Letian in search of the orichalcum golems, and saw the kingdom under attack from phrases. The Order of Knights, led by Hildegard, the Princess of Letian, was getting thrashed by the phrases because their weapons didn't stand a chance against the phrases' bodies. Toya suddenly swung in and saved the princess with his new crystal sword, which crumbled the phrases in a single blow, surprising Hildegard. Hildegard asked who he was, and he instructed her to rescue the residents of the town first. Toya had a blast taking out the phrases all by himself and healed the injured when he was done. He introduced himself as Toya and claimed to be passing by. After this, the princess also introduced herself and thanked him for stopping by to save the day. After her introduction, Toya realized she was a princess and reintroduced himself as the Grand Duke of Brunhild Duchy to make the princess weak in her knees. Having heard so much about him, the princess commended his achievements and his swordsmanship. Toya returned the compliments and asked if he could take away the fragments of the phrases he defeated. The princess obliged and asked how he got the sword he used. Then Toya explained that the sword was made from the crystals obtained from the phrases. However, it requires lots of special processing. Afterward, he caught the princess eyeing the sword and realized how much she wanted to own one. So Toya opened up his storage and gave her some of the swords as a token of friendship. The princess was surprised to have been gifted by a stranger and thanked him for his generosity while he took his leave. Princess Hildegard then couldn't conceal her excitement as she had just met her Prince Charming, who gifted her, hoping to see her again. Later, Toya found a more golden orichalcum golem and banked it up like the others. After putting the orichalcum in his storage, he spotted a deer standing nearby and chased it. The deer led him to a riverbank where she found an injured girl with missing limbs, lying unconscious on the ground. Toya then healed the girl and she became conscious. Later at the Alchemy ward, Flora informed Toya that she had healed the mystery girl's injuries and restored her missing limbs. However, the girl had lost her memories but retained general knowledge. Shocked at how fast it took Flora to patch up the mystery girl, Toya asked if the memory loss was an after effect of the treatment, pissing Flora off. She then told Toya to let her slice off his magnum and regrow it, so he could be sure the treatment didn't erase memories. Toya freaked out and guarded his magic wand from the pink-haired scallywag. Afterward, they both visited the mystery girl, who was awake and clueless about who they were or how she got there. Toya introduced himself to the girl, who seemed surprised he was a monarch, and told her about how he found her badly injured and unconscious in the mountains. While the girl checked out her regrown hands, Toya asked if she would like to pick a temporary name, since it was inconvenient to relate with a nameless person. The girl asked Toya to suggest a name for her, so he named her Sakura because of her pink hair, and she decided it was fine. Back in the castle, Toya informed Elsa and Lucia that Sakura was taking a stroll in the gardens. They asked if that was safe for her, but he assured them she'd be fine since Kojioku was watching over her. After this, they talked about how hard it must feel to lose memories, but Toya pointed out it might actually feel great since there was nothing to feel sad about. When asked what he would be doing for the day, Toya told the ladies he would be in energy-saving mode for the day. Shortly after, the girls took their leave and Toya took an idle walk around the castle. He then found Sakura singing and asked if she loved singing. She responded by saying it just felt nice to sing. He then showed her a piano in the castle and fiddled with the keys while reminiscing his childhood days when he learned to play. Sakura applauded him after he played and asked him to keep playing while she sang. The other ladies soon joined them, applauded Sakura for being a great singer, and asked her to sing more songs while they listened. Some moments later, Prim visited the castle and talked to Toya about a monstrous beast known as Ketobulpaz, which could spew poison from its mouth and petrify anyone who makes eye contact with it, turning them into rock. The guild requested Tuya's help to defeat the beast, but he asked if there were other adventurers who could take up the quest. Prim then told him the other adventurer who could take up the quest was a 70-year-old man, who was the previous king of Letian Night Kingdom, reminding him of his encounter with Hildegard. Prim apologized for making such a request of him since he's now a monarch, and said he was their only option since they couldn't rely on a 70-year-old man for such a critical quest. Tuya considered the bounty attached to the quest and decided to take it up, and hoped to rescue the previous adventurers, who had been turned to stone when they encountered the beast. Later, Tuya informed his fiancés about the crazy quest he was about to embark on, and they scolded him for being a greedy hero for hire. However, in his defense, he reminded them of how much it cost to keep the workshop running and how important it was to keep the people safe. While most of his fiancés agreed to go with him, Linha refused to join them. Before they left, Tuya replaced their weapons and ammunition with crystals from the phrases to increase their odds. Using his phone navigation systems, Tuya and his girls located the catapults and hid. Afterward, he snuck up behind the beast and startled it. The furious beast prepared to attack Tuya, but all hands were on deck as the ladies swung into action and attacked the beast from many sides. The catapults released some poisonous smoke from its mouth, and the girls fled except Linha, who was then rescued by Tuya using his fly spell. While they floated midair, Tuya got carried away by the softness of her body and her pleasant scent. However, he quickly pulled himself together, because he feared awakening his inner beast and the catapults. Following this, the beast charged at Tuya, who then increased the weight of his sword using the gravity spell and beheaded the catapults. Tuya was about to give his victory speech when Yumina called his attention to his feet, which were turning to rock. He stopped the petrification using his recovery spell and got rid of the rocks on his feet. Letian stared at the eyes of the beheaded beast and also got petrified but was saved by the recovery spell. However, the rocks on her body crumbled, shredding her clothes including her underwear. The girls forced Tuya to turn around and helped Letian out with her underwear problem. While the girls were focused on Letian, another catapult appeared and locked eyes with Tuya. His legs were covered with rocks again, and he used the recovery spell to set himself free. After this, he informed the girls that they were in for another round of rumble in the jungle. While the ladies shielded Letian to prevent her goodies from being exposed, Tuya faced the beast alone by placing a mosaic filter on the mystic eyes of the beast, preventing himself from getting petrified again. Eventually, they took out the second catapult and completed their quest. Afterward, Tuya proceeded without caution to set the petrified adventurers free with his recovery spell. But their clothes got shredded as the rocks came down, exposing their hidden treasures. Later, the Western kings tried out the Chevaliers in Brunhild and loved it. So Tuya decided to lend the Chevaliers to each kingdom to prepare them for the invasion of phrases as predicted by the professor. Meanwhile, in Lestian Galen, Hildegard's grandfather pointed out that she's been acting weirdly since she met Tuya. Her grandfather then told her of some rumors he heard about Tuya's mysterious weapons, as well as his giant soldiers that could be driven and controlled. Sometime later at the hangar, Monica and Tuya worked together, designing a personal chevalier he made for himself and named Night Baron. While this was going on, Kohaku notified Tuya through telepathic communication that he had a guest who claimed to be his elder sister and was waiting for him at the castle. Tuya wondered who it could be since he had no siblings. After Kohaku described the guest as a pink-haired lady who looked a little older than him, Tuya heard her voice and realized it was the goddess of love. Back at the castle, the goddess of love introduced herself as Karen, Tuya's elder sister, and suddenly hugged him, claiming to have missed him. His fiancés watched the awkward reunion while Yetta let loose her emotional floodgates. Tuya's surprised fiancés left the room to give them some privacy, while the august visitor thanked them for being considerate. After this, Tuya asked the goddess of love why she came down to the world, and she said she wasn't getting old and rusty from watching his love life from heaven, and had come to stay with him to get her fix by watching in person. While they continued their back-and-forth conversation, a maid stepped in to inform Tuya that some messenger from Letian had been waiting to see him for about an hour. The goddess of love suddenly reminded him of his encounter with Hildegard the Night Princess on his trip to Letian, surprising him that she had been stalking him. The maid then informed him that his guests requested to watch the knights train while they waited for him. While Tuya thought they were curious because they were knights, the goddess stated that the messenger was not just curious about the knights alone. Tuya then asked her what she meant by that, but the goddess kept it secret from him. Accompanied by his maid, Toya met Hildegard on the training grounds, and she told him she came with her grandfather as an escort. Afterward, her grandfather introduced himself as Galen, the past king of Lestia, and also a high-ranking adventurer. Galen thanked him for the crystal swords he gifted them and expressed his wish to do sightseeing in Brunhild. Galen offered Toya a handshake and withdrew his hand as Toya was about to shake him. He then grabbed the maid's rice cakes and apologized after making comments about the texture of her assets. Embarrassed by her grandfather's cultured personality, Hildegard apologized on his behalf and scolded him. While Toya thought of what just happened, Galen told him he heard some rumors about Brunhild possessing some artifacts that were controllable giant soldier suits. Toya then showed Galen the Chevalier and pulled out a walkie from his storage, instructing Monica to show them what it could do. Galen then asked what the Chevaliers were for, and Toya explained his intention was to share the Chevaliers to each nation as a backup plan in case the Phrases returned in a mass attack. After this, Galen decided to convince his son, the current king of Lestia, to join the alliance of Western kings, and Toya said he'd also have to hold a summit to inform the other kings about their new alliance. Later, Hildegard requested a duel with Ya, who was famed as the most powerful warrior in Brunhild. After dueling for a while, it was clear that they were equals with the sword. After this, Hildegard complimented Yahi for being an awesome knight. However, she was shocked and disappointed to find out that Yahi was one of the 6 fiancés Toya was engaged to. The nosy love goddess suddenly showed up and said she could see that Hildegard was in love with Toya, exposing her little secret. Despite Hildegard's effort to deny it, Yahi explained she had also been in her shoes once, but settled with it since Toya accepted her as well as the other ladies. So Hildegard admitted that she had fallen for Toya, but didn't want to be a homewrecker. After some persuasion from Ya and the love goddess, she decided to join the association of intending brides, but her grandfather stated he wouldn't approve of the marriage unless he could test her resolve in a duel with her. Afterward, the fiancés had a meeting to decide if Hildegard could join them, and they all accepted her. Karen suddenly crashed their meeting and asked Hildegard to tell them how she fell in love with Toya. After the romance talk about Toya, Hildegard explained how she followed her grandfather down to Brunhild just to get to see Toya. However, this reminded her of the duel with her grandfather, which she wasn't confident she could win. The girls then reassured her that Toya would come up with a plan to work it out like he always does. Later, when the duel began, Galen's strength and sword-wielding abilities outranked Hildegard's, so he dominated the duel. Knowing he was a cultured wanker, Toya came up with a plan to distract Galen using a holographic image of a lady in a swimsuit. His plan worked as Hildegard seized the moment and won the duel. However, his wives were pissed to know that their fiancé had the picture of a lady in a swimsuit. While Toya performed his healing spell on him, Galen admitted his defeat and approved the marriage. Meanwhile, the ladies envied the holographic image because it had massive plots. Afterward, Hildegard asked the other ladies about Toya's parents. However, they didn't have any answers for her, so they all directed the question to his self-acclaimed elder sister. Karen then advises them to be patient as Toya might tell them about his complicated story one day. To satisfy their curious minds, Karen stirred up their interest by promising to tell them some fun facts about Toya and his love interests since childhood. Kohaku sensed his master's secrets were about to be leaked by his talkative elder sister and tried to reach him to tip him off, but Karen prevented that from happening. Later, Kyoku's scouts discovered another abandoned ruin near the kingdom of Lestia. While he thought of the fastest way to get to the ruins, his harem of pretty ladies pulled up wearing schoolgirl outfits. He asked what the celebration was, and the girls told him they knew about his secret obsession for girls in that kind of outfit, like his first love, Sister Shoko. Toya was shocked and pissed to discover Karen told them about his childhood crush. Seeing his reaction, the girls asked if they looked good, and he complimented them, making them feel like they had just won the lottery. Afterward, Toya located the Rampart and Tower Islands and was welcomed by Leora, the administrator in charge of the Rampart. She further explained that the Tower and the Rampart merged some years ago, making both islands function as one. Leora questioned his compatibility, and Toya listed his achievements with the other islands and terminals. Leora simply bowed and acknowledged him as compatible, making Toya wonder if the nasty experience he'd had with the other administrators was actually necessary. Afterward, Leora led him to Pamela, the administrator in charge of the tower, but found her sleeping soundly under a tree. Leora apologized to Toya on her behalf and asked if he had any food with which she could wake her up. Tudia pulled out some food from his storage, and the Sleeping Beauty only responded to the aroma of the food. Having been starved for many years, Pamela asked Tudia for more food and a place to sleep if he wanted to be acknowledged for the tower. Tudia gave his word and got the usual rite of passage from the hungry-looking administrator. Afterward, he pulled out more food from his storage, and while Pamela feasted on it, Leora completed his registration with a kiss that lasted forever. She then apologized for getting carried away, since it was her first time kissing a man. It was her duty to entertain the professor at night, so she asked if Toya would like to visit her pleasure gardens, freaking him out. Afterward, Pamela tried to explain what the tower does, but fell asleep in the process, leaving Leora to do her job for her. Leora explained that the tower serves as the heart of Babylon by collecting magic particles from the air, amplifying them, and converting them into magical energy. After this, Pamela was back to her favorite sleeping spot and back to Dreamland, so Todia carried her along using his levitation spell. Lyra then showed Todia the rampart, which was the central pillar of Babylon's defense system, providing protection against physical and magical attacks. Todia was impressed by the abilities of the tower and rampart, and figured they would increase the speed of the mass production of the Chevaliers. Afterward, Todia introduced Leora to his collection of fiancés, and she asked about his other fiancés since only 6 were present. The other ladies informed them that Sue had gone on a trip to Belfast. While they talked, Todia got notified by Kohaku that he got a letter from Belfast, and he opened up a gate to receive the letter. In the letter, Todia was informed that Queen Yule gave birth to a boy, and he informed Eumena. They immediately went to Belfast and were greeted by the overly excited king, who asked Toya to name the newborn prince who would be replacing him as the heir. Toya then named the boy Yamato, and his other fiancés joined them. Later, while the ladies had a bath, they chatted about the birth of the prince and how touching it was to see the king excited. They also talked about the planned celebration of the prince's birth with fireworks. Elsa then pointed out that at some point each of them would have a baby for Toya. Afterward, while Toya wondered why his fiancés were already thinking about having children, Flora and the other administrators informed him that he was going to have lots of children, since the professor had foreseen that he was going to have 9 wives and each of them would bear him children. Toya was troubled to hear he'd be taking on more wives, so he told the administrators to keep the information from his wives. Seska then asks if Toya would like to add her to his list of wives, since there is still space for 2 more. Toya then freaked out and refused, saying it was impossible. While they argued, his fiancés joined them, curious to know what the argument was about. Despite his plea with the administrators to keep it a secret, they told his fiancés everything. Afterward, Toya's fiancés informed him that they were okay with him having more wives, but they decided to punish him for trying to keep them out of the loop. His jury of judging fiancés considered him guilty and demanded that he kiss all of them as his punishment. However, Toya gave the preparation for Yamato's birth celebrations as an excuse to buy himself some time and promised to fulfill the obligation after the party. On the night of the party to celebrate Yamato's birth, Todia and his fiancés watched the fireworks display from the castle balcony. While this was going on, Eumena approached Toya and said he looked happy. Toya then explained he doesn't have kids yet, but he's glad to have his people and his fiancés by his side. Moved by his words, Eumena impulsively planted a kiss on him. Linz, who had been watching, came along and got hers too, followed by Sue, who only got a peck on her cheek. Not wanting to be left out, Lucia also joined them to get her kiss but ran away embarrassed. Meanwhile, Hildegard had passed out because she was nervous at the thought of being kissed. Toya approached Yati and kissed her but panicked and hurled him into the air like a boomerang. Todia painfully crash-landed on his back and Elsa pulled him up and kissed him as well. Seeing how fun it was to make him fly, she also landed a punch that made him fly like a piece of paper in the wind. After taking his hits like a champ, his fiancés smiled at him as they watched the last rounds of the fireworks explode. The administrators found the professor's clairvoyance gem and discovered the other 2 wives would be Lean and Sakura. If you made it to the end of this video, confuse the fake fans by commenting "No wonder Toya died." And if you like anime recaps like this, then watch this video right here.